Let me move on. And talk about the question of focus. Because just like if we focus on specific element of an event or not makes a difference, it applies on the macro level to our entire life. What I'm going to do now is elaborate, go at higher level of the spiral of understanding and learning of something that we've talked about time and again. Ed Diener, who is also, whom I just mentioned his research, he's also the first president of the International Positive Psychology Association. He's from Illinois. After years of research, concludes, it appears that the way people perceive the world is much more important to happiness than objective circumstances. Now, if you think about it, that makes a lot of sense. We know a lot of people who seemingly have everything, whether it's wealth, whether it's wonderful friends and family, all their dreams have come true, and they're still miserable, where there are people who have very little, who have experienced hardship after hardship, and who never cease to celebrate life. Then there are people who have everything going for them and really appreciate it, don't take it for granted, and are happy. And then there are people who don't have much and never cease to complain. In other words, it's not just the internal, it's not just the external that matters. What matters more is the internal. Happiness is not contingent on our status or the state of our bank account. It's much more dependent on our state of mind, on what we choose to focus on. Because our emotions are determined by external circumstances as well as internal. Interpretation matters. So, for example, look at what Edison did. 5,000 failures to the external observer. For him, the evaluation was very different. The internal evaluation, the subjective evaluation, it was 5,000 times where I showed what doesn't work. And it's up to us to decide where we focus. Do we celebrate successes or take it for granted? Do we perceive failures and hardships as a disaster or as an opportunity for growth? Emerson, to different minds, the same world is a hell and a heaven. And Shakespeare, nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Now, I don't 100% agree with Shakespeare, but he is to a great extent right. A person in Darfur is living in hell. And it's very difficult to reframe and to derive and to look at the positive in that situation. Same for a person living in a concentration camp. So there are external circumstances that matter. A homeless person, if you give them enough money for a home, for food, for basic education, of course will become happier because of a change in external circumstances. However, beyond the basic needs, beyond the basic freedoms, it is mostly about how we perceive reality, and we're able to make it into a heaven or hell. Let's do an exercise that will capture this idea of focus creating reality. So I have a question for you. How many geometric shapes? Unfortunately, it's a great exercise, but it only works once. Remember this, how you created your reality, just based on the question that you asked. We think when we look at a picture, now everyone, of course, is looking on the children on the bus and the clock, right? But before, it was right in front of you and most of you did not see it. Because it is a question of focus. Very often we complain about life and we say, things are terrible and awful, not realizing that we're the cause of it. Either by imagining it and then beliefs become self-fulfilling prophecies, or because we just focus on what is not working. And once again, this does not mean that there are no objective, terrible circumstances out there. But to a great extent, we co-create our reality. Now, one of the students who was in 1504 2 years ago recommended this book to me, Way of the Peaceful Warrior. And it's a wonderful book. I just started reading it. And there's a movie on it, right. I just started reading it yesterday, and I came across this, coincidentally, this parable. So I want to read it to you. It's a story that Dan Millman, the author, tells. I met him on a construction site in the Midwest. When the lunch whistle blew, all the workers would sit down together to eat. And every day Sam would open his lunch pail and start to complain. "Son of a gun," he'd cry. "Not peanut butter and jelly sandwich again. I hate peanut butter and jelly." He whined about his peanut butter and jelly sandwiches day after day after day, until one of the guys on the work crew finally said, "Sam, if you hate peanut butter and jelly so much, why don't you just tell your old lady to make you something different?" "What do you mean, my old lady?" Sam replied. "I'm not married. I make my own sandwiches." Now, very often we make our own sandwiches and we don't even notice it. Because the questions that we ask determine our reality. A peanut butter sandwich, or geometric shapes, or children on the bus, or salami, whatever it is. We very often create our own reality. And if we understand this, we can transform, change the way that we perceive, change our focus, change our questions. Whether it's questions disputing irrational evaluations, whether it's questions focusing on the positive. And the questions create a new reality. There are essentially two archetypes